everyone, it's Carol at Oak House Journals. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, fabulous to have you with me. I hope you're all happy and well. This is my completed garden-themed journal of stitchery, and if you've been watching my previous videos, you will have seen how I created all the embroideries that have gone into this little journal. You will have also seen how I've created the cover to get it to this point. So the only thing I need to do now is really to embellish the front cover, and for that what I plan to do is to layer up some scraps of fabric, embroider those scraps, and then stitch the whole piece onto my front cover. I think that will be an easier way for me to do it rather than to try and embroider the cover itself, even though there is nice wool batting behind this Swiss dot tulle and vintage linen that actually creates the cover. So I'm going to go away, grab some scraps, and I'll come back. So here is where I've got to so far. These are my scraps. I've used 2 pieces of the vintage French linen, bed linen. So I've got this piece here and this backing piece, and then these 2 pieces are a rougher, coarse vintage French linen that came from tea towels. So I thought that would give me a little bit of difference in the texture. I've also got a scrap of lace that I'm going to put across the bottom. Now I haven't adhered this with Bondweb, but I could do. I'm just going to stitch that in place. And I've also got these other 2 little pieces which I'm going to put down there like that, so that I can have some detail from this embellishment on the front cover of the journal going on to the actual journal itself. Now I've also done this little bit because I had some more scraps left over. Whether I embroider on this and use it on the back, I don't know yet, but it is all prepped, ready to go. You can see the sheen where I've put Bondweb on the back, ready to go. As you can see, I've just tack down my lace along the bottom. The 2 pieces I am planning to have hanging down, I've left off for the time being. I want to see this in situ on my cover before I actually do that. But as you can see, I've done some running stitches all the way across this. I didn't need to do that because I've used Bondweb on here, and that would hold it in place along with the embroidery that I plan to do. But I thought it would give a nice dimension, and what I've also done is I've put some of that wool batting on the back and just trimmed it away from the frayed edges. I'm not very good at doing anything in a straight line, so to help me, what I did was I used my Friction marker pen, which if you remember is heat erasable, and a ruler, and I've drawn lines across. Now I've actually stitched this. You might be able to just see the indents where my stitches are on the front, but you can certainly see them on the back. So I'll take this to the iron, apply some hot dry heat to this, and come back and show you what it looks like. With the magic of YouTube, I've just got rid of those lines, and now you can see the actual stitching on the front here. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to use this as an embroidery piece on my cover, but I've certainly got it ready to use for another project. The design that I want to have on the front here will be one that is very similar to one that Jennifer Colston did for the front of her daughter's planner. So as you can see here, I've just drawn out a rough design using my Friction marker pen just to see whether I could get the proportions right for going on here. Now normally I would trace my design onto my fabric with my Friction marker pen, but using a light box. Now, even if I put this onto my light box, it is not going to show through all of these layers. So I could trace it on if I wanted to, or I could draw it by hand with my Friction marker pen. So there's my tree design, not identical to this and not identical to Jennifer's by any means. And as I get stitching, this design might change again, simply because I'm more comfortable letting it evolve, or because I'm finding my branches or my leaves are too packed and too close together. So what I'm going to do now is herringbone stitches as Jennifer did on hers, down these lines and across these lines here. Not because I need to secure them, but just for an added decoration. And then I'm going to go in with my threads and start embroidering this. For the thread that I'm going to use for my herringbone stitch, I've lifted out a couple of crochet cottons. Now these are very, very fine. This one is an off-white crochet cotton, a 40 weight. I want this herringbone stitch to be very, very delicate and in the background. And I think because this is a 40 weight, whilst it's quite a fine crochet cotton, I think it's going to stand out too much, even though it is a perfect match for my background fabric. This one is a white crochet cotton, and this is a 60 weight, so it's very, very fine. This will blend nicely because it is so fine, so I'm going to go with this one. My tree is all stitched now, and as you saw, I was using this thread. Now this is one of the threads that is hand dyed by Steph Francis. Let me open up the skein. There we go, this is still doubled over. As you can see, it's variegated, but it's got this lovely chestnut colour to it. And I particularly like this effect for doing trees and vegetation because it gives a little bit of depth to your embroidery. Now this is one of her silks. I'm not sure what colour it is because the label has gone, but I do know from this skein that I've lifted out to do my foliage that it's one of her extra fine silk threads. And again, this is another variegated one which I think will work beautifully for my leaves on here. I've also lifted out this one. Let me just open my guard there. As you can see, this is again a variegated one. It's a fine wool. Now I was thinking of using this, but I think it might be a bit too thick given that I've worked in an extra fine silk for my branches or my tree here, but I've got it off to one side to use if I want to. Jennifer Coulston on her design did stem stitch. Well, I've been doing a lot of stem stitch recently, so I resorted to another favourite of mine for doing trees and bark and woodwork, and that is split back stitch. It's a lovely relaxing stitch to do, but perhaps not with very, very fine silk like this, because it was quite difficult for me to actually see where the thread was so that I can put my needle into the previous stitch and actually split it. So it was a little bit difficult, but I like the texture it gives, and I like the fact that you can work several layers and seamlessly blend them off to a single straight stitch. And that is what I've used up here to get the little fine details on the twigs. For the actual stem here, I've done 3 rows of split back stitch. Up here I've used 2 going into 1 and then into the straight stitch, and down here for this main trunk of my my tree I've done 6, believe it or not. This is looking very, very straight to me. Normally I would whip some of the stitches or do some little Portuguese knots or something like that to add some texture. Now I actually have whipped some of these rows of stitching here, but the thread is so fine you can't see, so I'm hoping that when I come to do my little bits of vegetation down here that I can stitch over that trunk and stop it looking so stark. So I'm ready now to go in and do my vegetation, and as you can see I've still got my marks left where potentially I want some leaves to be. Whether I add any more onto here as I go, I will see, but for now I'm just going to go in and start working those. So here we go, a couple of hours later, and I've finished my vegetation. I've still got my Fricks and marker pen markings in the background. I could iron those off at this stage, but I'm not going to. I'm going to iron those off at the end when I give this a good press. And at that stage it may well indicate that I need to pop in a few more leaves, but I'm pretty happy with how it's looking at the moment. And now I'm going to go in and do a little bit of vegetation at the bottom, some grasses, and maybe a flower down here. So I'm going to get on with that. I need to go away and choose some threads. I'm leaving this out because I'm going to do some little French knots at the bottom here to ground the colour on this down at the bottom, and I'll be back when I've finished off my vegetation. So here's my finished embroidery for the front cover. I haven't put those two little pieces of lace on the bottom yet. I'm going to do that when this is stitched onto my cover. So there's my little embroidery to go on the front, bonder web on the back, and I'm just going to have that on the front there like that. I am going to activate the bonder web by ironing this in place, but I'm also going to use art glitter glue as well as a belt and braces. There's absolutely no threat of the art glitter glue bleeding through either the cover or this, so I'm more than happy to put that on as well. So I'm going to do that very quickly now, trying not to catch the bonder web with the precision nib on this glue bottle. So I've got a nice generous amount on there. I'm just going to pop it, just check that's the right way up, and it is. Pop that on the front like that. Give it a little press. Now I'm just going to weight this down for a minute or two with something flat and heavy on top. So there we go, everybody. That's the embroidery attached to the front cover. I did go back in after I glued and used the bonder web to do a few little stitches using this thread here, and I'll put the details in the description box down below because I've used this a lot throughout this journal to do some lovely little invisible stitches. It's wonderful thread. So if you're interested, the details will be in the description box, as I say. And I'm not going to do any photographs at the end of this video as I usually do, because I would like to do a video of the flip through of this completed journal, and that will go up on my channel tomorrow. So once again, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing this cover come into being, and I hope you'll join me for the last video in this series. So until then, take care, everybody. Bye bye now.